Good evening, and welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, and Merry Christmas. We're so glad that you're with us this evening. If you decided to be part of our nativity story, thank you for your help. Thank you, sheep and donkey and shepherds and wise men. And if you still want to be part of the story, you were thinking about it and you were on the fence, but you decided, yes, I do want to participate. There are a couple of animal costumes still left on the table at the back. So you can feel free to change your mind at any time and join in the story. And as you can hear, the wiggle rug is open over at the front here. If you've got some wiggles or giggles you need to shake out, you can come on over here and relatively quietly wiggle around. Feel free to move around as you need to during the service as we tell our story tonight. And I ask you to silence your phones and devices. Let's take a deep breath in and let us enter a space of worship. And now as we light our chalice, I want to ask Ewan and Rory and Charlie to come up and help. And would you all help by saying the words on the screen as we light the flame? We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. This evening, our call to celebration is written by the Reverend Sherry Woodbury. On this eve of mystery and magic, let us enter into the Christmas story, as if we were there on the holy night. What part will we play this year? Are you the mother, trusting your body to know what to do when the time of birth comes? Are you the father, protecting your vulnerable family from unknown threats on a strange journey? Are you the innkeeper who has no room, or will you take us in? Perhaps you are the animals who hear the child's first cry, but who will sing the songs of rejoicing for the precious babe? Who will rise up and follow the bright star of hope, even if it means a few lost sheep? What wise ones will give away their wealth and remember what to adore? And when the Holy Family must travel again, who in this harsh land will shelter them? On this silent night, let us search our hearts for our place in the Christmas story that never ends. Let us choose again our role in the incarnation of love. And would you, in spirit or in body, rise and sing together our first song this evening, number 224 in the gray hymnal, Let Christmas Come.
All the words for this evening's hymns are on the word sheet. And so if you see an empty word sheet that no one's using, if you could pass it over to someone who could use one. First hymn, Let Christmas Come.
Now it's time for the beginning of our very old story. So when you hear your part in the story, come on forward and you can help act it out. And if you don't come forward when you hear your part, that's okay. I'll give you a little wave. There are a few versions of this story written long ago, and it's a story about a real person, but we know that at least some parts of it, some parts of the ones that we have written, are imagined. So we'll go ahead. Yes, but we're going to just listen for this part, okay, Ewan? Mm-hmm. So we're going to go ahead and add to the story with our own imaginations, too. Because that's what good storytellers and good story listeners do. The first thing to know about our story is that, like in so many stories, there is an emperor. And so we don't have anybody playing this emperor because we don't see him in the story. He lives far across the sea. And that emperor was a baddie. We have to start out knowing that, even though he's not who the story is about. This was a cruel ruler of the Roman Empire named Caesar Augustus, and he lived far away across the sea from where our story takes place, but his power and his armies stretched very far. He forced the people far and wide to submit to his soldiers and to pray prayers to him as if he were a god. Caesar is Lord, they were made to chant in the streets at all the festivals. And so our story begins long ago, in the time of this big meanie, Caesar Augustus. He had ordered everyone in the whole empire of Rome to return to their place of birth and to be counted in a census so that he could know how many people he ruled. And there was a young couple named Mary and Joseph during those days. Come on up, Mary and Joseph. And they lived in the land of Palestine, which was under the control of Caesar, and they were expecting a baby. The couple lived in Nazareth in the north, but Joseph had been born in a city on the west bank of Palestine called Bethlehem, farther to the south. And so they set out to walk the long road to the city of his ancestors so they could be counted there. Both of these cities still exist, so we know from Google Maps that the walk took at least a few days. And the story doesn't say so, but we have long imagined that they had a donkey with them to help carry their bags. Is the donkey ready? They had a donkey named Frankie with them. And sometimes we imagine on this long walk, Mary riding the donkey over rocky desert paths, but I think that bit was probably added by someone who had never been pregnant. And so when they arrived in Bethlehem, they went, we imagine, to the home of Joseph's family. We can be pretty sure the family welcomed them in, along with the rest of the extended family who were returning to be counted in the census. The house probably looked the way most ancient Palestinian homes looked, so let's imagine it together. There was a first floor with a fire for cooking and staying warm, and a stall for animals. Are there any cows about? Because they were here on the first floor of the house. Cows are coming forward. And then a ladder to the second floor where people ate and slept and entertained visitors. The second floor was cleaner. The cows weren't allowed up the ladder. And warmer. And the house would have been quite crowded on the night of our story. So we'll imagine that all of you are the gathered family, okay? And as travelers, Mary and Joseph would have been offered food and seats by the fire and foot washing, a traditional greeting for sandal-wearing travelers in a dusty desert. And there was probably lots of hugging and exclaiming of, "It's been so long," and "My, how big you've gotten." Do any of your family gatherings look that way at this time of year? Yeah, mine too. So we'll pause the story right here, and our storytellers can take a seat if you like or stay standing, however you're comfortable. And let's sing one verse of a hymn, "O Little Town of Bethlehem." It'll be the next hymn in your hymn book together.
O little town of Bethlehem,
So when we left Mary and Joseph, they were visiting with family and loved ones in a house crowded with guests. After settling in, night fell, and Mary knew the time was near for their baby to be born. Now, here is where we sometimes imagine that Joseph and Mary looked for an inn, like a hotel, to stay in, and were turned away because there were no rooms. But the story doesn't really say that. It's a bit of an oopsie-daisy with the translation that we maybe could have corrected a few thousand years ago, but it's no big deal. We'll correct it tonight. We know they came from a culture with strict hospitality rules and would certainly have had family to welcome them. Some versions of the story even list the many, many, many members of Joseph's family back through hundreds of generations, though we thought that that part would be a little too boring to share with you tonight, so we'll skip it. And honestly, hotels were not really a thing yet back then when this story takes place. What the story does tell us is that the upper floor of the house, that second story, the space for entertaining guests, was too crowded to have a baby in. It was full of the many aunts and uncles and cousins and siblings and grandparents, as we imagine them, all on their sleeping mats. Maybe little ones were crawling over top of their parents and cousins to find the coziest spot to cuddle in. Maybe great-granddad was snoring. Perhaps a few night owls stayed up talking in a corner. So Mary went downstairs for the baby to be born. And I think we can imagine that Joseph or maybe an auntie or a granny or two were there to help. And because of all the visitors upstairs, there was not an extra sleeping mat or an inch of space to be had, so Mary swaddled the baby in warm blankets. Stage magic. And laid him in the feeding trough for the animals, which we call a manger. And then she gave him a name, Jesus. Outside, on a hill nearby, shepherds were watching their sheep in the field. Do we have any sheep or shepherds? Right here on the hill, right here. Yes, and these sheep really needed watching, didn't they? It was the lambing season, and just like Joseph and whatever aunties were there to help Mary, they were helping their sheep give birth to these little baby lambs in the night. Late in the night, a messenger appeared, who we sometimes call an angel. Is there an angel? Right here. A messenger appeared and said to them, "Do not be afraid." This is what messengers in the Bible always say. They are so kind to start their messages that way. "I bring glad tidings of great joy," the messenger went on. "Today a baby is born in Bethlehem, and he is the Lord," meaning he is the most powerful. "You will find him wrapped in blankets in a manger." What a funny message to be given, the shepherds must have thought. A baby is the most powerful? That was the language they used for that faraway emperor, Caesar. Do you remember him? But a baby, and not just any baby, but one all the way out here in the middle of nowhere, in a home so poor and crowded that he has to sleep in a feed trough. They had to see it for themselves. So the story tells us that the shepherds left their sheep, though maybe, like you and me and church pageant directors through the centuries, we might imagine them carrying those newborn lambs with them to stay warm, just like the manger baby. They went into the city of Bethlehem, and they found the home that Joseph and Mary were staying in, and went inside to greet the new baby. And finding him to be holy indeed, they bowed their heads and gazed at him in wonder. They told Mary what the messenger had said about her baby, and she was, as new mothers ought to be, so proud. And will you sing together now our hymn number 244, the next in your booklet? It came upon a midnight clear. Now we pause in the middle of our story for a moment of centering and meditation. And if you're part of the story and you'd like to sit right on the floor, you can do that. Or you can grab a chair from up front somewhere if sitting on the floor seems not very meditative to you. So let's take a big breath in together. Let it out with a sigh. Perhaps we close our eyes as we hear these words from the Reverend Rebecca Parker. You have to know your body as the home of God. And this is the purpose of Christmas. The rose blossoming in the wilderness is the unfolding of your pleasure as the fingers peel an orange and sweetness buds in the mouth. The bright star in the night sky is the sudden clarity of your instinct for joy. The birth cry in the night is your child falling into the dark in your arms, holding her. The terror of Herod's murderous intent is your rage that would prefer death to change. The singing angel is your voice at church, not sure of the tune, but certain for a moment that there is glory. The animals breathing their warm breath in the fragile stable are your emotions kneeling into the body of the earth, at ease in the presence of God. Mary is you, divinity in your body. Joseph is you, sheltering God in the world. This is the key to the mystery. The Word become flesh, and we are its dwelling place. Amen. And back to our story. Yay! Then the story says the shepherds went out and became messengers themselves. So shepherds, go out, or maybe even just back to the wiggle rug. Telling the people in the community that a baby was born, and that this baby, one of their own babies, in the far fringes of the empire, so poor as to have been born among animals and laid in a manger, was just as important as Caesar himself. God doesn't live in Rome across the sea, they whispered to people, whispers that kept spreading for years to come. God lives right here in the dusty desert with us. Love is here among us, and it is more powerful than any emperor could dream of being. Meanwhile, far away in the east, there were 3 magi, by which we mean scholars or learners. Learners. People who learn things. And are there magi ready? Here they come. It did take them quite a while. They had been watching the night sky for a long time, charting every star and every planet. And they noticed that there was a new star, one they had never tracked before. It sat low on the western horizon, and they thought its appearance must mean something important. These were very curious guys, and they set out on a journey toward that star. They followed the star until they found themselves in Bethlehem, sometime like 12 days or maybe 2 years after Jesus was born. It was a long time ago, and the details got a little fuzzy between the stories. So they heard rumors around town that a new king had been born among the Jewish people of Bethlehem, a baby as powerful as Caesar, they were saying. So they decided to try and find him. Now, Do you remember that bad old emperor we started with, Caesar Augustus?
Yes, you just said it.
Yes. All the way across the sea. Well, he was so far away, he had appointed helpers throughout his empire to do some badness on his behalf. And the guy that he had appointed to rule over Palestine was named Herod. Do we have a Herod? All right, here he comes. Now, if you thought Caesar was a meanie, ooh, get a load of this guy. Right here. You can be right in front, Herod. And the Magi, because they were rich and fancy people, went right to Herod to ask him whether he had heard about the new king, a ruler to rival the power of the empire. And Herod was like, what? I am the only king around here, besides my boss who has never visited, which is just how I like things. But he was tricky. And so he kept that as an inside thought. Out loud to the Magi, he said, wow, sounds so cool. Please go and find this new king and tell me exactly where he is so I can go and honor him. And he went back to his palace, and the Magi went out to find the baby. You can go back to your palace, Herod. They followed the star to the place where Joseph and Mary and the baby were. And they saw him there, and they brought him fancy gifts from their home country, and they bowed down before him as if he truly were a powerful king. Meanwhile, Herod was up to no good. There in the back, you see him, up to no good. Well, he called up Caesar's soldiers, and he told them to go and find that newborn king and kill him. And he told them if they couldn't find the king, they should kill every baby they did find, because unjust rules from unjust rulers always hurt everyone, not just the people they're meant for. And this unjust ruler did not succeed, though. That night, the Magi dreamed that Herod was being tricky and cruel, so they warned Joseph and Mary, and then they went straight home by a secret route without telling Herod anything. So go ahead and go straight home, Magi. Take the most secret of routes. And Joseph and Mary and their baby escaped through the desert to Egypt. I'm sure they took the donkey with them, where they stayed as refugees for a long time, maybe 2 years or maybe 12 years, depending on which story you read, until they felt it was safe to go home. They never went back to Bethlehem. They didn't want to see Herod again. But eventually they returned to their home up north in Nazareth, saved because of the small kindness and enormous faith of a few strangers. And this is the end of our story. Would you sing together the next hymn in your booklet, We Three Kings? Thank you so much to everyone who helped tell the story. I want to offer a closing reading this evening by Edward Erickson, and it goes like this. We stand with eyes towards the east, awaiting the rising of the star, and pray that love shall become flesh and dwell among us, and that compassion shall be born in human hearts. We celebrate the discovery of fact in the garment of legend. Let every cradle be visited by the three good kings of faith, hope, and love. Then Christmas is with us always, and every birth among us is the birth of God, and every child is the Christ child. and every song is the song of angels. To celebrate Christmas is to say yes to the power of love to remake humanity. May we be renewed in the love which can save the world. Would you join together in our next hymn, the first Noel? Before we sing our final hymn this evening, I'm going to pass a flame from the chalice to the front row, and I would ask you to pass it to the folks behind you, and so on until everyone's candles are lit. And we'll all practice good fire safety while we hold our candles in the darkness. Looking at you. And as we pass the flame, I will offer as a benediction these words from Howard Thurman. I will light candles this Christmas, candles of joy despite sadness, candles of hope where despair keeps watch, candles of courage for fears ever present, candles of peace for tempest-tossed days, candles of grace to ease heavy burdens, candles of love to inspire all my living, candles that will burn all the year long.
as we extinguish all our flames, we make the same promise that we do every week. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Merry Christmas.